Workshop improvement of the week. I am going to show how simple it is to refresh the cutter heads on a spiral cutter head jointer. I've got a bunch of wood to mill. It's reclaimed deck wood, very hard, heavy stuff called ipe, a Brazilian walnut, I understand. Since it was deck wood, it's got these slots cut in for discs that join the deck together. I'm just going to mill off those edges. So normally when you're milling, I think I would normally mill a board flat and then rip it to width. Here I'm going to mill the edges, or one edge of each one first, so I can rip those slots off. I'll end up with a narrower board that'll be easier to mill flat. But before I do that, and the purpose of this video is to show a refresh of a spiral cutter head. So the idea with a spiral cutter head is you've got these carbide cutters, there's 4 edges of them, and when you dull an edge, you should be able to loosen the cutter, rotate it, and get a fresh edge. So in addition to carbide lasting longer than steel without needing sharpening, it should be quick and easy to do this. I'd never done it before. I'm about to show, my first time on a video here of trying to do that. They use a Torx wrench. I found you had to, I kind of with trial and error learned exactly how much to loosen it. I didn't want to loosen too much because I didn't want to, have a screw drop out and have to find it. That'd be a real hassle, searching for a screw in the middle of the dust collection pan of a jointer. So what I didn't think about initially on this is it makes sense to rotate all of the cutters the same direction. I failed to do that at first, but about halfway through the second side of this, I realized, I really should be rotating all of these clockwise. Not so much that it makes a difference this first time. I could rotate them any direction and get a fresh edge. But next time, if I rotate them clockwise again, I'll get a consistent fresh edge on all of them. So after having that revelation, partway through this, I had to go back and redo some of them. Fortunately, since this is the first time I was refreshing the edges, I was able to look at them and tell which way I'd rotated it, and go back and fix the ones so that they are consistently being rotated clockwise. You can see right here I'm doing some counterclockwise because I hadn't yet had my revelation that they should all be the same direction. It's right about now that I realize, oops, let's go back and rotate all of these. So some of these I've got to rotate 2 because I did it counterclockwise. So I bring it on 2 spots, so it's a single clockwise rotation. And anyways, this is obviously speeded up quite a bit because nobody wants to see, this boring process. But that's the only thing. And I think clockwise makes sense because I'm more likely to remember clockwise next time I go, a few months from now to get another fresh edge on these cutter heads. By the way, I noticed the cutter heads were getting dull because I was starting to get some vibration from milling this wood. It's super heavy, super hard wood. I think it's really rough on cutters. The carbide cutters do fine with it, but they were starting to vibrate quite a bit. And I think having a fresh edge on them really helped that. I'm probably going to have to replace a bunch of the cutters pretty soon just because, this wood is so hard on them. But, in the meantime, I've got another couple of fresh edges I can use. My milling strategy for these, as I mentioned before, was to mill an edge first so I can get an edge that is straight enough to run along a table saw fence, and then I can cut down the boards and make them narrower. Normally I wouldn't do that. Normally you would flatten, a wide edge of a board, a surface of a board, flatten the wide surface, and then flatten an edge. But on this one, and I'll show in a second when I show the edge of the board, it's a lot nicer to be flattening it when it's narrower. So that one just took one pass and was fine to go and take that along the table saw. Some of them took like 2 or 3 passes to get an edge that was good enough to go on the table saw, but it didn't take all that much for most of them. And instead of having about a 5 1/4 inch board to flatten, I ended up with a 4-inch board, a little more than a 4-inch board to flatten. Here it is. And that's just a lot faster and easier to flatten. So I'm going to try to flatten it by running the concave surface down so that it's kind of riding evenly on those 2 edges. And I'll just show a couple of the passes of the flattening. It's speeded up, obviously. Here I decided it's taking a little bit too aggressive of a cut. I wanted an easier cut, so it was going to go through there smoother. And there it's just cutting on these edges because I have the concave side down. It's getting it more, but you can still see that it's not fully cutting all the way through it. It's not yet flat. And here it's getting pretty flat. I think I do one more pass with this one. So this strategy made it a lot easier to do those boards. So my only tip with you, if you have a spiral cutterhead, just make sure that you rotate everything in the same direction. Please like and subscribe. Bye.